Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, from all four corners of the globe, and welcome to what is a new venture in the copybook here at Simsport Racing. We're here live in the heart of Cheshire in Little Budworth at the 2.7-mile Oulton Park International Circuit, which tonight is the host of the inaugural round of the Simsport Racing Ginetta Brit Sprint, and for what is sure to be an incredible evening of racing. I'm joined in the virtual comms box this evening by none other than my esteemed colleague, Tim Fullbrook. Tim, as you all know, but our viewers may not just yet, we've got a differing structure to tonight's event, haven't we?
Hi, David. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. It's definitely something new in the Simsport Racing portfolio. Not only is it all drivers in the same Ginetta GT4, but a 10-minute Superpole really is the talk of the town at the moment. Drivers will be forced to set their fastest lap on the one available opportunity, which is kind of, it's a bit of a gamble, David. We were chatting about it pre-show. All or nothing, one lap to set your time. And if you make a mistake that lap, or you dirty it, you cut the tracks, etc., you lose your lap, back of the grid. Likewise, if you try and pull a sneaky one on the stewards and set another time, disqualified immediately, back of the grid start. So it's a very interesting format for qualifying, followed by a 45-minute flag to flag sprint race with no requirements to stop for fuel or tyres. But this Superpole, David, is definitely something to keep an eye on, and I'm very excited to see how our grid of nearly 40 drivers get on this evening.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like I say, something we've not seen before, and something that's really going to separate the wheat from the chaff. It's a very much a balance of risk and reward, I would say, especially with the track like Oulton Park, of course, fresh into the Assetto Corsa Competizione list or roster of tracks, of course, only being released a couple of weeks ago in the British GT DLC, but it's not the easiest track. From what I've known in the industry, it's affectionately known as the mini 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗏, and I've driven it a few times myself. It's not the easiest track, but it is one that can be very rewarding, but yeah, is very, very easy to overcompensate. And like you say, especially in the Superpole, we're going to see some guys probably pushing it to as close to the limit as they possibly can. And if they go over that limit, then like you say, they are going to be right at the back of the grid on a track that you and I well know, Tim, is not going to be easy to overtake on.
No, and your comparison there, David, of the mini 𝗬𝗨𝗕𝗏 is completely accurate. There's no margin for error at this track. Grass lines the circuit at every point, and some places even a wall is a metre or two away from the track surface. So it's a really all or nothing circuit. And like you say about qualifying and how that can impact your race, start at the back of the grid. Trying to fight up through the field is going to be exceptionally difficult. Yes, there are a couple of overtaking opportunities, particularly into the chicane on the back straight down into 𝗪𝗓𝗓𝗏. That's somewhere where we've seen a lot of action in British GT and British touring cars and other racing series. But with equal machinery, that's where it gets difficult. It might be okay if you're in GT3s and GT4s and you've got a car that picks up out the corners nicely, quicker on the top end, nice and comfortable on the brakes. But it's an equal level playing field tonight. So trying to get a move done, you're either going to have to force someone into a mistake or really set yourself up nicely to pass the driver in front.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's going to be a testament to racecraft. We understand we've got 2 minutes left of practice, and then we will get into that Superpole qualifying session as soon as they are finished. But yeah, it's really going to be a test of everyone's racecraft. I understand we've got 33 drivers in the server this evening, just shy of the 40 we would normally expect, but I understand that others have got other commitments, funnily enough, around Oulton Park in other areas as well. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, like you say, the Ginettas obviously being equal machine, they're not the quickest in a straight line, so there's not really going to be too much influence in terms of draft and things like that. And it's very much going to be a case of coming out of some of these corners. You come out of 𝗪𝗓𝗓𝗏 corner, of course, the hairpin down at the end of the back straight down Lakeside. It's going to be interesting to see whether we see any moves going into there. Obviously, the island bend is that real kind of, you've got to go hell for leather into that left-hand kink, and I struggle to imagine we're going to see too many cars going into there side by side. But yeah, there's a couple of overtaking spots, but all of them, I would say, Tim, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, they do require a certain amount of aggression to get the move done. I think you'll agree.
A certain amount of aggression indeed, but also a certain level of compliance for the other car or cars involved. You've got to have someone who's up for racing fair, because otherwise you'll both end off the track, in the gravel, in a wall somewhere damaged, and that's going to be it. Race done. And like you say, there's some corners here which really are, flat out. There is 100% aggression there. Island bend. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine how these Ginettas are going to be moving around underneath these drivers through there. And if I like on the first lap or someone's setting up for a move, that's going to be a really hot spot of action, getting the cars then stopped into the Shell Oil's hairpin. I'm really excited to see how these guys go about it, and whether someone's a bit more reserved, maybe lets the drama unfold around them, and then maybe picks their opportunity, see their chances, or whether, we talk about this in tennis. It's a good comparison that sometimes at the end of a match, it's all about the unforced errors, and it's all about counting up those mistakes you didn't need to make. And I think that's going to be crucial tonight, as we see quite a few people in the chat. Andrew Fife saying 40 cars in a line will be fun on track like Oulton. Yeah, it will be. And I think me and David have been, really getting excited for that kind of thing. Frankie Helliwell, hi there as well. And Michael Hafferton, nice to see you joining in with the stream. But yeah, David, it's going to be about counting up those mistakes you didn't need to make, I think, come the end of the 45 minutes.
Yeah, you're right, and like we said, Oulton Park is one of those tracks that is not going to take those mistakes lightly. We see there's plenty of chances for incidents. You go into Old Hall Corner, the first corner on the track. If you go too fast and go back to the Superpole, you're too aggressive. You're too arrogant almost going into that first corner, and you can lose the lap on the first exit of there as you go down towards Cascades. And again, there's so many bumps around this corner. Some of them, from my experience anyway, I use them as braking markers, especially as you go down into Cascades. You've got that little drop. You'll see the guys bounce down them in these little Ginettas throughout qualifying and into the 45-minute race as well. And it's one of those tracks that is, very little room for error. And if you do, you mentioned him, there's walls all the way around you. So if you make one mistake, you could either be in the wall or even worse, you could be completely out of the race entirely with some sort of terminal damage. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of these 30 to 40 cars are going to get on this evening. And I think you're right. I think it's going to be a case of try and get through the first couple of corners unscathed and then see where the race pans out from there.
I think it's quite misleading sometimes. You see a series that has the word sprint in, you think it's going to be flat out everything. And sometimes with 45 minutes, you realize how long the race can actually be. You're in the car and you get 20 minutes in and you're like, okay, right, I feel like I've got through the first part of the drama. Look up the clock and realize you're not even halfway through the race yet. And you're kind of left scratching your head thinking, oh, crikey, how am I going to get through the rest of this? So it's really going to be about racecraft. And I think that's a word we're going to mention a lot this evening. Is someone going to back out of a move, maybe let someone else make a mistake or overcook it into one of these, fairly reduced overtaking opportunities? No massive braking zones. I think that's something that's crucial in single make racing, is if you've got elongated braking zones where drivers can make passes, maybe find that extra margin over somewhere else. But at Oulton Park, it's one corner after the next. And like you say, it's bumpy, offline. The track surface changes width at some point. So you might be all right going side by side through, one section of 50 meters, and then the next 50 meters, 100 yards, it narrows down. Got to go single file or 2x2, 3x3 is not going to happen. I think racecraft is really going to be something we talk about tonight and for the rest of this season, because it's all about making the best of the opportunities that present themselves to you and not making those big mistakes. But yeah, really looking forward to this one, David.
Yeah, absolutely. The drivers are being briefed at the moment, so we'll get into qualifying as soon as they are out of there. Of course, new series for us here at Simsport Racing, so the guys do need to be made fully aware of what's going to be happening. I'm sure they will be absolutely fine, though. Hopefully, you won't see anyone contravening the Superpole rules. Of course, we talked about it briefly. The drivers will have their out lap, they'll have their flying lap, and that is it. You'll probably see quite a few of them will just park it on the grass after they've done their flying lap. And if we do catch anyone who's done 3 laps and try to do the slide, the 𝗦𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗧, then I'm sure the stewards will be very hard with the hammer, and they'll be getting very much stuck in and shifting those guys right to the back of the grid.
Yeah, and with 10 minutes, there's not a lot of time. So there's this whole strategy to think about. Do I trundle down pit lane and be the first out, maybe catch traffic on my hot lap? Do I sit around in pit lane twiddling my thumbs? We see in Formula E qualifying, which has a similar format with group quali, where the drivers will wait till the end of the session and be the very last out on track. And we've seen how much of a problem that can cause for drivers in the real world. Now here with a similar format, these drivers are going to be playing games really before we even get to the race. And actually had a quick chat with 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗏, one of our racers, and he didn't let on much, but he said he's got a plan up his sleeve for qualifying. So I think there's some drivers out there who've thought ahead about how they're going to tackle this one. So excited to see, what goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to see. I mean, maybe we'll see it. Well, we can't really even see sandbagging, really, can we? Because it's literally, you put your stall out, you go for your flying lap, and you'll see where you end up. I think we saw in the practice session, we were fortunate enough to catch a quick glimpse of it before we went live on the broadcast this evening, and I saw the top of the timing charts was a 1:42.0. Obviously, that has been running for probably the last it's been running for the last 45 minutes of that practice session. So these will have been probably gearing up for it. So I'm not sure whether we will see a time like that, but of course, across the next, technically speaking, 10 weeks, we've got 5 brilliant rounds in this Ginetta Brit Sprint. Starting off, of course, this evening at Oulton Park. We'll then fly over to Kent. I'll say we'll fly, we probably will, but you could drive there as well. But it'll take a little bit longer, of course, from one end of the country to another almost. Down to Brands Hatch, that'll be on the 14th of March. Over to Norfolk, so not too far, just a little bit up the M25. If my map of the world,
your sat nav's done you all right there, David. I think you're around the M25 and then onwards a bit further, but yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. On to the Snetterton 300, of course, for the 28th of March. Up the M1 or back onto the M25 and up the M1 to Northampton for Silverstone on the 11th of April. And then a bit further up the M1 to a place that I've frequented many years, but not necessarily for racing, more for the musical side of things. We'll finish off the season at Donington Park on the 25th of April. I mean, which one of those, Tim, do you think is going to stand out personally?
Well, that's a difficult question, David. First of all, I'm enjoying your David Wressell's roadmap of the UK. Enjoyed that one particularly. I think I'm going to find myself anywhere. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Silverstone. Particularly, I think that track with its width, compared to these other circuits, which are like the park circuits, besides Snetterton, which is also another ex-airfield, I think that's really going to open up for some exciting racing. But we've cut to qualifying now, our first Superpole session. And here we have 𝗪𝗔𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 out on track, taking care of those marker boards on the inside of Britain's chicane there. So should see some times coming in shortly, but it looks like he's just warming up the tyres. Everyone trying to find a bit of space out on track. And look at that timer, David, already down to 8 minutes, 50 seconds. It's running out.
Yeah, it's not much time at all. And you can actually see, interestingly, I mean, we can see the top 23 on the timing board on the left-hand side, the majority of which I'm only counting about 7 or 8 of them are still in the pit. So I think, like you said, I think it's probably fair to say we'll probably see them come out in waves. I think it'd be very similar to a Q3 sort of formality that we tend to see in Formula One over recent years, where we might see a gaggle of cars come out at the start. You might see 1 or 2 try and get out in the middle, as the guys have done their Superpole laps. And then I think we'll see a couple of people maybe just trying to gamble a little bit of track evolution. We can see it's fast at the moment. It's warm enough track. It's 24 degrees track temperature at the moment. No threat of rain over the next 10 minutes, which the guys will be very, very keen to see, and I'm sure they'll be happy with that. But it's a fair bit of wind, so I wonder if they'll be starting to see just how this track evolves, see what the markers are, watch these guys get their bank laps as Jordan Burroughs goes on to his only flying lap in the 76 185 Ginetta. And we'll see how they get on. It's going to be really interesting to see who's going to come out on top.
Already, David, you can see one of the problems. That pink Ginetta up the road, is he on a warm-up lap? Is he on his Superpole lap? You've got to have this kind of sixth sense of what's going on track around you to see whether you're going to be clear for that lap. And we can't emphasise it enough. One shot. You've only got one shot. So you've got to make that lap quick. You don't want to be out there when other people are. And I'm looking up and down the grid, and like you say, with the 23 on the timing tower on the left-hand side, currently 4 are sat in pit lane, one of them being 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏 in the Simsport Solutions car, and he's the one who said he had a plan. So I wonder whether he's waiting, as we see the pink Ginetta getting out of the way very kindly indeed. I'm starting to think whether his plan is just to sit it out, let the majority of the times go in, watch the timing screen, see everyone, hop back into pit lane, let the track evolve as well, get that rubber laid down, and then go out and set your fast lap right at the death as the seconds count down to 0.
Yeah, absolutely. You see Jordan Burroughs now going through 𝗪𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏 towards the end of the lap. It'll be interesting to see. It looks like he is going to be the first of the drivers to set a flying lap from what I can tell. I can see the number 19, the number 7, Richard Bigsley just in front of him. I would imagine he's gearing up for a hot lap, but he's kind of hit him at the wrong point as Jordan at the moment, because Rich is going to be setting up for his lap, because he's going to cross the line now. What's his lap going to be? Well, to make sure he doesn't carry out. So 1:43.0. And again, it's a case we've seen the guys talking in the server as we go on board to these Pokemon things, race 79 car. I've heard the guys talking about it, and obviously the question is, look, what do we do when we finish the lap? Do we then carry on and go back to the pits manually? And I think the majority of them are going to just stop the car and just drop back into pit lane manually. But even then, you've got to go a little bit further. And with the amount of cars that are on track, especially at the moment, it's going to be very difficult to find a point to even stop the car and drop yourself back into the pits to get to.
Yeah, it's really all about not tripping up, as we see Denise Pope. Actually, there we go, making a mistake through the British chicane, running out wide. I think that might have been a hot lap, so that's it for her, if I'm correct. So she'll be towards the back end of the grid. We're seeing some more lap times come in. Here we go, Robbie Staple with Profile Racing in the 24. 14 years old is Robbie, so he's definitely the youngest on our grid this evening, but he looks like he's going to set his first time, and he goes fourth. A very healthy lap in the 43s. Charlie Kent here as well in the nice dark green and lime green donned Ginetta, rounding the final corner as he comes down over the little crest there. That is the corner where you're going to run wide, David, and lose your lap. So already track limits may be a question, but Charlie Kent setting his lap time to go into 5th place. But yeah, drivers needing to keep their eyes on the track limits for sure.
Absolutely. I thought I saw Joris Peters Veem going a little bit wide there through 𝗔𝗠𝗓𝗏. He looked like he took that second apex a little bit later than he wanted to. You can see an interesting split of times at the moment. 𝗪𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 in 15th and the 111. Ginetta is a little bit off the pace. I think he's done his lap, so we should be seeing the little P icon pop up on his name in a moment as Joris goes over the line. What's his time? He puts himself 13th for the 1:44.4. It's telling me that we're talking about a 1:42.5. As we're now starting to understand, Tim, that what 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏's plan was. He seems to have left it about 5 minutes. He's now come out of track. You see him warming up the tyres. It looks like I can imagine he's got a bit of time behind him.
He's got to be careful, though. It looks like one of those Ancho cars behind. Don't want to hold someone up and end up getting told off by the stewards. Actually, looks like he's put the pedal down now. But yeah, I mean, like you were saying, David, over on the left-hand side, the number of those little P boxes next to the drivers on the timing tower, the track's empty compared to how it was only 2 minutes ago. So already 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏's track is going to have far more, property to play with out there on this very short and twisty Oulton Park circuit.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to go forward with 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Hopefully we'll stick on for the lap as he goes into Oulton corner, taking it a little bit cautiously. You can see there, not wanting to go too wide onto the outfield there. Coming down into Cascade, you see this drop now. There's the pump there. You can see it using its braking marker. So he goes into Cascade. Get on it too early. You've got a little bit of a tyre onto that outside of there, and it's still going to give you a nice chance. He goes in towards Island Bend now. Big commitment going into that corner, trying to clip back inside apex, going into 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏. Probably one of the biggest braking points on the circuit. Nice camber on the corner, which managed to get a lot of speed through. I don't know about you two. Look like he missed that apex a little bit. To me, I would have taken that a little bit tighter. He's going into Britain's now. Clouds the curve on the inside. Clouds the second one. Runs slightly over it, over the hill, through hilltop down towards his lobs. And he's kept it clean so far. We'll see if he can keep it clean for the next half of the lap as well.
Yeah, it's looking like a nice tidy lap, but exactly, David, you say about getting the car turned into Ireland. But also another issue is these curves. You know, the Ginetta is almost like a little go-kart with a body strap to it. It doesn't take big curves very nicely at all. And 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 able to just get the best of it through Britain and not lose too much time as we see him into 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Now it's such a tricky corner. He can run wide and he's off. He's off at 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. No, Kieran, that's your lap gone. So all this talk about his lap and there we go. That's the jeopardy of Superpole, David. There we go, played out on our very first qualifying session.
I can't imagine that was part of the plan he was talking to you about, Tim. If it was, then I'm very intrigued to see how he can get on in the race itself, as we see Regan Mitchell and the number 69 Bullshifters machine. We'll have to be very, very careful with the way we pronounce that team name.
They're testing us, David,
the next
aren't they?
5 rounds. They are indeed.
They're trying to get the better of us. They know we're relatively new to this. They're trying to catch us out with a name like that.
Absolutely, it's spot on. Regan seems to be keeping it just as clean as Kieran was, but we saw You're always on the limit. You'll be so careful. And I actually heard Kieran himself talking about it in the chat before we went live this evening. He was saying, "You've got to be so careful. You're finding yourself going against what you normally do in a standard qualifying session. You're going to manage to navigate through groups without any issue. But you're finding going into a corner, you want to go as quick as you can. But you find yourself with your foot hovering over the accelerator. You don't want to get on the power too early and invalidate that lap. And you see Regan go so much wider than he did there and gain a little bit more time, but just keeping that cautious line. He goes over the stripe and he's 7/10 off Richards, who's currently top of the timing sheets with, I think we've only got 2 or 3 people, if that, who are still left to go at time this evening.
Yeah, it's really started to clear up, and 𝗦𝗔𝗟𝗘𝗡𝗏 here in the 𝗪𝗏𝗡𝗏 Motorsport number 93, he's got to get a little bit of a hurry on. I think he'll be okay for time if he needs to get onto his lap, but if this is his lap, he's certainly looking in mighty fine control of his car on the way into lodged corner, and then he'll plunge down and then back up through the roller coaster that is 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏. We'll see where he goes on the order. I think he might be the last driver due to set a time, and he goes pole position. Wow. David, by 0.006 of a second. Bro leads Richards. Superpole's providing already.
Absolutely, that was one of the for some reason it reminded me of 𝗪𝗞𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏, where he says you don't necessarily look like you're going very quickly, but it's one of the best times. You see Charlie Kent's been disqualified. He was only a second off the pace, Tim. He was in 8th place on the timing chart, so I imagine he's probably done he's done the naughty. He's tried to do it on the slide. It's on one lap too many, and as a result he's going to be starting right at the back of the grid for this evening's race.
Yeah, I was looking at the timing screen there, David, just before we cut away. A large number of drivers didn't get a lap. So really that jeopardy aspect, that cash chips in, put all your money on red and, is really, really played out, rung true this evening. And a large number of drivers not getting their times in, and they're towards the back end of the grid. So wow, I mean, I can't believe that's over already, David. Very quick session, but I think we saw some interesting strategies playing out. We saw 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗏 leaving it late to see if he had the track space. We saw 𝗦𝗦𝗏𝗏𝗏 leaving it even later, and it paid dividends, and he's got the pole position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talked about track evolution, didn't you, Tim? About a third of the way into the qualifying session, and I didn't quite catch. I think it was still a fast track at that point. The track temperature was very similar, but he certainly played it well. I mean, it's probably just as much a case of, like you say, balancing that risk and reward. And as you saw, he had a track pretty much to himself to do whatever he needed to do. No issues of having to balance your braking markers based on other people a little bit further forwards, and it's interesting to see how it's paid out for him. He's going to be starting at the front of the pack for this 45-minute race.
Definitely, and Bro is driving this car, I see, in the next season of the Simsport Racing GT4s, which starts this Wednesday evening. He's back in the Ginetta, so he's getting his practice in this car, and it's already paying off for him. First time out, first pole position. Exciting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think over the next 5 rounds, we're going to see plenty of different formulations of plans in the qualifying session, and that was just one of them. And I think it'll be interesting to see whether Kieran will do the same thing again next time, or whether he's double bluffed himself and he's going to try something different in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, and we get to these tracks as well. I mean, Oulton Park, you want the clean air around you, but when we get to Snetterton and Silverstone, you wonder whether people might start getting together with a teammate and saying, okay, you give me the toe on this Superpole, and then next time out Silverstone, I'll give you the toe. There's going to be a little bit of gamesmanship here as we cut to the grid, and it's great to see so many cars on the starting line for this evening's race. Over 29 cars, I think. Oh no, sorry, Charlie Kent, the last driver on the grid, in 29th, but excited to see how this one plays out, David. And also we've got the pro and am split to think about as well. So although there is a race for the overall win, there's also a race in classes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all going to be bragging rights at the end of the season, isn't it? So we'll definitely keep a keen eye for those who have not yet had a chance to catch the Simsport Racing stream. Then welcome along. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and like the stream as well, and it gets out to all the people. Gets the old YouTube algorithm working, or so I've been told. I've never truly understood how it works. But for those of you who are new, if you want to understand the difference between the pro and the am classes, you want to look at the colour of the numbers on the timing tower. You can see on the left-hand side. Those in white are the pro drivers. Those in red are the AMs. And like you mentioned, Tim, different championship for both of them. it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out, and it means that across this sprint race, or like you say, 45-minute sprint race never necessarily feels like a sprint, but it will be for these guys, I'm sure, and it will keep them busy with the track like Oulton Park for the entire duration. It's going to be interesting to see what sort of battles we get, and whether we start to see the start of the championship forming at the start of this race.
Definitely, and I think with only 5 rounds, every point's going to matter. A lot of points up for grabs. I think it runs from first all the way down through to the low and high 30s. So everyone's going to be scoring points of some sort. But it's all about getting the best points. And actually, seeing the YouTube chat, it's 𝗬𝗏𝗡𝗏, who's going to be lining up in 10th on the grid at the moment. Said he went out early on the track to get it over with, and he ran wide at 2 separate corners, so definitely could have gone faster. But at least the idea of not getting held up by traffic worked out. So yeah, exactly what we were saying, David. Drivers already playing games, and it's only the first race of the season.
Absolutely. I mean, Steve's hit the nail on the head, hasn't he? He's starting in 10th, and if he'd have gone a little bit faster, he could have clipped a wheel on the grass, he could have invalidated his lap, but he could be in the same position as someone like 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗧, obviously we saw drop down the field, and he's currently sitting in 22nd on the grid. He's towards the back end of it. So it is very much, I've said it a few times, I'll say it once more, and I'll try to make sure I don't say it again this evening, we will over the next 5 rounds. It's that balance of risk and reward. It's as simple as that. You know you've only got 1 lap. You've got to be careful. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how it gets on. And I think we're going to see, I'm going to throw it out there very, very early doors, I think we're going to see a different top 3 or 4 in the qualifying session for every single round, because people are just going to have differing levels of success with whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I don't think it's a complete lottery, so I feel like we'll see similar people up there. But exactly 1 week, you might make a mistake. I wouldn't be surprised to see 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗏 ruining his error this evening, and he'll be right back up there come the next race, next time out. So yeah, I do agree with you there, David. I think it's a fantastic implementation to this season, a fantastic new addition to the Simsport Racing portfolio. And I think it just adds that extra bit of spice to what already is a very hot, chilly mix of Ginettas out there at Oulton Park. But it looks like the drivers are going to be getting underway shortly and be making some minor changes to their setups, I'm sure, or just shifting from a qualifying preset into a race one. But 45 minutes, I can't work out if this one's going to go quickly or slowly, David, but I'm sure it's going to be jam-packed full of action.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be a frantic race for sure. I'm imagining 𝗦𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏's just going to hope for one of those sessions where he just gets into Old Hall Corner in first place, keeps it clean as he leads off the grid now onto their full formation lap, and I'm sure he'll be hoping for 45 minutes of relative peace and quiet, I've no doubt. But yeah, with 30 odd cars on the grid on the track for this evening, it's going to be, I don't think you get too much of that. We shouldn't see too much in terms of lap markers, I hope, barring any issues into the first couple of corners, any incidents that may fall out of the first couple of corners. And like you mentioned, Tim, obviously with the different widths of this track, you're going to see people at points where we might see 3 abreast, and we may be only able to see 1. So it's going to be interesting to see how that comes out. And you see Chris Pinchbeck giving 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏 the vote of confidence, knowing that he will come good, knowing the quality of him, because he's obviously driven with him a few times over the last couple of weeks. And we saw how well Kieran and the Simsport team did at the Brain Tumor Charity Next Gen 12 hours of Silverstone yesterday. Did you manage to catch that, Tim? What were your thoughts? You did?
I caught a little bit here and there, but the main thing really, I suppose, is Kieran used all his talent in qualifying yesterday. He bagged pole in the GT4 class, and this evening he seemingly run out through Druids, but I'm sure he'll come back fighting as he always does. But yeah, a very exciting race. Unfortunately, the Simsport guys unable to keep that lead, but whoever keeps a lead from pole position over 12 hours, the question is this evening, is 𝗦𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏 going to have a boring race up front, or is he going to be challenged by 𝗟𝗔𝗟𝗏𝗡𝗃 in behind? But someone I want to point out really is James Gilbert in one of the many Pulse Simsport cars in 8th place at the moment, number 228. He's top of the AM pile, so our grid was split in half through a qualifying event yesterday, and the drivers were split into 2 20-car classes, so the Pro and the AM, like we mentioned before. But Gilbert already up inside the top 10, so you can see how this grid can get really shuffled. Yes, he could be scoring some healthy points, but in the AM Championship, he's got 3 cars behind him before his closest competitor, so in Daniel Andrews in the 29. So yeah, already seeing some interesting stories playing out, and we're only halfway around the warm-up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just going back to that qualification run you talked about, Tim, interesting to note that James was actually only fourth fastest of the AM guys, and he was only 1.6 seconds off of the inevitable leader of that qualification series, who was in fact pole sitter 𝗦𝗏𝗡, leading us round Druids at the moment. So it's really good to see. So unfortunately, 𝗪𝗏𝗡𝗏's dropped into the pits. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what's happened there and there. Hopefully, we'll get a bit more detail on that as and when we get it. But 𝗦𝗏𝗡𝗏 is going to be leading into the final corner into 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗘𝗏𝗏 and back up 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏. As you mentioned, it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on into this first corner, because obviously Old Hall corner is not the slowest of first corners to have on any racing track. There's not necessarily much of a chance of overtaking. I think it's a case of get through there where you can, and we'll see how it plays out. But they're coming over the rise now onto the start finish straight, which we're going green any moment now. We've got cameras up and down the field, as you can see, as we go green in the British Ginetta Sprint here with Simsport Racing. Richards down the outside. He looks like 𝗦𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is going to cover it off. He does just about, but Matt is looking to get around the outside. He's just about not managed to keep that run, as you see cars get kicking up dust. But it looks like, Tim, everyone's managed to make it through the first couple of corners relatively unscathed.
It looks fairly clean at the moment, but I'm sure there's plenty of disputes to settle down the order. Actually, it looks like one of the pole Simsport cars going off on the exit of Cascades pretty sharply. But a nice start from 𝗦𝗏𝗏𝗏. He knew maybe to let Richards go to the outside, let him challenge around the first corner at Old Hall, and he maybe had a game plan and he knew that he'd be able to cover that one off. But fantastic start. Nice to see the majority of cars going round cleanly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you see, it's one of those, I think, if you keep the inside line, which of course the pole sitter is going to get, courtesy of getting onto the top step and qualify, to give him that chance just to shut the door on the outside. And now he's going to work on extending that gap. It's 0.2 of a second at the moment as they go down the hill towards his lots for the first time and into the Gnita Brit corner. And yeah, interesting to see. It looks like we've kept fairly clean so far. I didn't quite catch anyone drifting off towards the back end of the grid. And it looks like we're starting to see a little bit of a gap form as Matt Richards tries to claw down current leader of the race, who's still got 43.5 minutes left, of course. So anything could change 𝗦𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 at the moment.
Yeah, it looks like there's been a bit of drama down at the 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 chicane. That's 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 in the 𝗬𝗏𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏 Racing 74 car. He looked like he'd been off on the grass. There's been some sort of drama there where we can see Williams on the timing tower just dropping off on the left-hand side. So there could have been some drama there that we weren't able to catch. But Regan Mitchell here in the 69 Bull Shifters car going side by side with Jordan Burrows, I think, or Gilbert, sorry, in front as they come into Old Hall. Mitchell trying to go around the outside and does so convincingly. Fantastic move by Mitchell, with Stapleford closing in behind in that bright orange Ginetta. But a very nice opening start to this season, and I'm excited to see what carries on. But Bro really just needs to get his head down and see if he can gap Richards.
Yeah, absolutely. He's done a decent job so far. He's nearly half a second ahead, so he's got that gap. He's at least going to be looking away from having any sort of sends down the inside, which I'm sure they'll be pleased to get rid of. Interesting to note, 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 already up to 16th place as it stands. He's still doing a really good job to get through the grid at the moment. Again, because that's just been a case of trying to avoid any contacts the most. Miles Dixon close behind Robbie Stapleford, of course. You mentioned him, our youngest driver in the profile racing, number 24 car, going through Britain's rather, and up the hill again. One of the chances for an overtaking spot as they go down in towards his lap if you can get close enough. And it's one of those main areas that, interestingly enough, despite the nature of the chicane, it's still an area of the track where you can run too wide as you go up the hill as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how long these runs will take. Yeah, 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, we've seen him on the Simsport Solutions car now. Yeah, like I said before, up to 16th place and challenging Callum Cook for a position up into 14th as well, as he's going in towards Druids at the moment. Looks like he's going to have to run down on the inside. Wonderful move. He got that almost done before the apex, and he looks like he's just going to hang Callum out to dry, and Matt Webb's not going to need two invitations. So it looks like he makes the move through, and Callum loses 2 positions in the space of 1 corner now.
Yeah, 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 really is the man on the mission, isn't he? He's going to be disappointed with that result in qualifying. Interested to see how far up the order he can get. So actually, I just saw someone start tumbling down the timing screen on the left-hand side. Not quite sure who that was. Didn't quite catch the glimpse. But Bro here, I mean, he's not able to drop Richards. He's almost taking Richards with him, as they now have a 1 second gap over Glenn Guest behind. And then it's Burrows and Mitchell who round out the top 5. So maybe they're trying to work together. Richards knows how quick Bro's been. They're just going to work together. No silly looks, no silly moves up the inside or anything. Any kind of tomfoolery in this early stage of the race, and just gap the field and maybe settle the dispute in the final 5 minutes. But a nice start to the race. I love this shot here. You can see the cars really fighting against the adverse camber of Britons into there. It's so tricky, and the car just bouncing over the curbs. Let's see, we have Cameron Fyfe in the 13 on the run down to the 𝗟𝗚𝗓𝗏 corner. He's down in 25th at the moment, but just running outside the top 5-6 in the AM class, having a nice battle with Bowler behind and Pettersson in front. Nice to see Cameron enjoying his time in the Ginetta so far. But yeah, over the curbs into these chicanes, David, like you were saying, it is an opportunity down into here, into Knickerbrook and Hislop's, but you've really got to have someone who's willing to play fair. Otherwise, you both end up in the grass.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I think you mentioned it a little bit earlier in the broadcast, Tim. It's a case of compliance as much as racecraft, if anything. And I think, like you pointed out, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think we're seeing that from Matt Richards, 𝗂𝗏 Bro at the moment, because they are starting to gap yes behind them. It's about a 1.5 second gap at the moment. And you mentioned, no sense just yet. And I think even if you were going to send it, you're going to have some sort of conviction. You can't just half-heartedly have a bit of a look up the inside of a lot of these corners. You're going to have to look at it and almost size up your move a couple of corners in advance. If you know that your competitor, if your opponent's going to be a little bit sloppy, maybe coming out of cascades like we have just done there, maybe you get a run on them, maybe you can size them up into 𝗟𝗚𝗓𝗏𝗏's corner, but it's not one of those places you can half-heartedly make a move, and the stewards will be well aware of that. I'm sure we'll see a couple of inquiries beyond this evening. So whatever we see results at the end of this, in the next 39.5 minutes, I would stress the importance that I'm sure these will only be provisional.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what we like to have. Fair racing. And a lot of guys will hold their hands up if a mistake is theirs, but a competitive bunch here this evening. 𝗪𝗏𝗪 now, we've spoken about him a lot, but in 16th, he's kind of getting stuck now amongst faster drivers or drivers around his pace, or he's just struggling to find a way through. So with under 40 minutes to go now, he's almost reached kind of the midpoint of the grid. So he's really going to have to kick on if he wants to find himself inside the top 10. Richards, though, looking like he's still holding on to the back of Bros. We see Denise Pope, I think it's 𝗟𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 in front, or 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗏 in the 327, exchanging positions. So there's a bit of swapsies going on for 20th position and around there. But we're seeing the grid start to kind of split up into these battle packs, David, and that's what creates some exciting racing, is we get these groups of guys going hammer and tongs at each other for whatever position it is. Like this battle's down in 20th position, but they're still going just as hard at it as if it was a fight for the podium or even the race win. So exciting racing so far, as we see 𝗪𝗏𝗪 trying to put a move on 𝗪𝗓𝗏𝗏 into Old Hall and gets the job done, but they're going to be side by side down the hill into Cascades. 𝗪𝗏𝗪's going to have to be brave to hang it out, and he's managed to get through before the corner, so that's really helpful stuff for 𝗪𝗏𝗪. Now let's see if he can kick on, bridge a gap and catch the group in front, 1.2 seconds up the road to the back of Daniel Andrews, which I'm sure he'll be doing. But 𝗪𝗓𝗏𝗏 fighting back side by side into Island Bend, 2 wheels on the grass. 𝗪𝗏𝗪 round the outside and manages to maintain the position into 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏's hairpin, and does so, uses the camber nicely just to kind of close the door, and behind it looks like Kent's looking for a way through as well and gets past. So it's almost like once you get out of line, David, the train seems to come flying through.
Yeah, pass or be pass there, wasn't it, Tim? That was an unbelievable little battle between 𝗪𝗓𝗏𝗏 and 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 there, and of course Joris coming off second hand, unfortunately, in the SMH Motorsports car. But it shows you just how important it is to minimise the amount of time you're stuck in battles with people. You saw it there. That battle went from Old Hall corner in turn number 1 all the way down to 𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗏 turn number 5. Now, 5 corners doesn't maybe sound like a huge amount to the untrained eye, but if you think about the distance they've gone as well, where they've pretty much been alongside each other for the majority of it, it's going to lose them a significant amount of time. And I'm looking at the timing deltas at the moment, and I can see that 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗏, between that time, I managed to make a note. I think it's like 1.4 seconds back to ahead to Daniel Andrews in 12th place. Now up to 2.2. You can see just how much time he's lost, and you can see the gap there visible up towards the likes of Pixley, as you see there, and Dan Andrews just behind him. And battles all the way up the field, but if they continue to battle as they are, the grid is naturally just going to come to a bit more of a concertina effect, and we're going to start to see these battles and trains almost get bigger and bigger as Pixley looks for what dare I call it, an audacious move around the outside of 𝗪𝗓𝗔𝗦𝗔𝗓 into Cascades. That's going to put him under a lot of pressure from Daniel Andrews as they go down towards Island Bend, as he looks like he's just about to get alongside, but sensibly, I would probably say, elects to live another day and suggests to himself, I think I'll probably just hold off for a minute and I will let Richard carry on in front of me for a couple more corners at least.
Yeah, we can see 𝗪𝗏𝗏 closing that gap as we were talking there, David. It's now down to 1.5 seconds. And I can't explain how interesting that move was from 𝗪𝗏𝗏. He was under attack from 𝗪𝗏𝗏 behind, and he elected to take the outside line to defend his position. That's so difficult to go against your racing understanding. You're so used to, I'll defend the inside from a pass. But to select the outside on the run into the Island Bend and say, yeah, that's going to benefit me the most. You've got to flick a switch in your brain and fight that instinct, which is to cover off the inside. And someone who might have to be covering off the inside very shortly, 𝗦𝗏𝗏𝗏, as it looks like Richards is keeping with him and hassling him the whole way. They've guessed behind 2.5 seconds to the number 52 in third, who's got Burrows almost a couple of seconds back in fourth, and then Regan Mitchell in the 69 has done a great job in fifth. But these guys are just starting to pull away from the front of the field, and it looks like they're going to have a bit of a boxing match come the final few minutes, I think, David.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, 45 minutes is technically classed as a sprint, but it's not necessarily one as such. You want to win you want to win the war, not necessarily the battle. And I think those guys are definitely vouching for those words at the moment. You're not seeing too much in terms of aggression, nothing too much in terms of speed moves, keeping it clean. Matt Richards knows there's enough time. We've still got just over 34 minutes left in this first round of the Ginetta Brit Sprint here at Oulton Park, and I'm sure he's biding his time. He'll be sizing him up. It's very much like an endurance race to an extent. It's like a game of chess. You can almost see him sizing up and trying to get an understanding where Aiden might not necessarily be as powerful or as confident in certain corners as he might be, and I'm sure he'll be planning that move. Not necessarily for now, he's getting very close into his lock. That gap is as close as it has been in this first 10 minutes or so. And again, I'm still not entirely sure whether he's confident he'll make that move now, but we'll see whether he does. He's got a great run up the hill in towards Druids. They go through Clay Hill and into 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 down into Druids. He's going to try and make a move. He's going to stick behind him, it looks like. I wonder if he's going to try and just get a better apex. Goes down the inside into Druids. That's a little bit close. That 2-1 is not going to go there. Very close to move. Nearly a bit of contact between the front two there.
Oh, it's lucky Richards didn't clip the curb or anything. That could have really unsettled the car underneath him and left him sailing into the side of Rowe. But fantastic racing from these guys, and interesting to see that once the opportunity presented itself, Richards didn't wait. So scrap what I was saying about him maybe waiting to the final 10 minutes to make a move. He seems like he wants to get past as soon as possible, but he'll sit in behind and continue doing this revision of where is Aiden in front, faster, slower, where's his advantage. It seemed like he managed to get a cracking run out of his lots through 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 and up the hill towards Druid, so maybe we'll see more of the same on this lap. But it looks like Bro's just able to give himself a little bit of breathing space as they come through Island. Meanwhile, 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 unable to get up to Daniel Andrews, still 0.8 back now, so we might be seeing another move from the Simsport Solutions driver. And great racing from Gilbert, as we're saying, leading the AM class in 6th place overall and looking pretty healthy there at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously got Daniel Andrews in the picture at the moment, and funnily enough, just the picture comes up. I talk about the fantastic camera. We've got Chris Pinchbeck mentioning that in the chat. Big shout out to Steve Proudly, who's on the cameras this evening and doing the broadcasting. Fantastic work as ever. He's managed to get the second piece. He goes, yeah, Richards going down the inside into his lops. He's going to make the move stick as they go through 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. He's going to hang it around the outside. 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏's not going to make that move very easy, and he's just about held on. As they go up the hill, he's going to have the inside line to Druids, but he looks like he's managed to hold on to the position for now at least. But Richards is putting 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 under an immense amount of pressure at the moment. It seems like only a matter of time before we see this lead change hands to him.
Yeah, I think Bro's going to be fighting this one quite hard. We saw there he really closed the door on Richards on the exit of 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and slammed it in his face and said there's no chance of coming through here. So Bro doesn't want to let him through. Richards really wants to get past. We see, I think that's Pixley off in the grass there, and 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 running wide as well. Yeah, so they're all kind of getting caught up through each other's minor mistakes here. 𝗪𝗏𝗪 now on the outside of Kent, who's going to go back up the inside as they come through 𝗪𝗓𝗓𝗡 and up towards the finish line with nearly half an hour to go, David. I'm not sure how we're going to survive the rest of this one.
No, I'm not. I'm not certainly going to need a hot towel and a nice long sleep tonight after this one. If the first 15 minutes is anything to go by, we've obviously had an intense Superpole come through. We've now had 15 minutes of non-stop action from first all the way down to 30. It's incredible the amount of racecraft we're seeing from these guys now, and racecraft is the absolute way to put it. You're seeing moves going from all over the shop, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you made your tennis reference, Tim. It is very much a case of just trying to exude those unforced errors from people. You see 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧 looking to make a move down the inside to 𝗟𝗜𝗞𝗘, big send on to Daniel Andrews there, a little bit of contact, bringing the British GT point very much into a little bit of door open for the two of them there, but he's managed to make the move stick.
I think that was fair game. I think there was a lot of room for 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧, and he came back nicely. It wasn't straight into the side. He wasn't using that car. I think it was Andrews potentially to turn. You know, he just kind of skimmed off the inside of him. A little bit of paint traded, and on their way they go. But Kent's been quite optimistic here. He saw 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧 making moves and actually capitalised on the mistake as 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧 makes another one, getting all kinds of unsettled over the curb there on the exit of Knickerbrook, and Kent was behind 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧 and actually snuck back through, so he's going to have to make another move if he wants to get inside the top 10. But these guys fighting now for 11th place. It's Dave Hedges up the road, got a 2-second gap to him, as we see in the picture. Steve Proudley's going to have to put together a picture in picture, etc. for the next race, I'm sure of it. Plenty of action filling our screens this evening, but we can see that Richard's just dropping off the back of Pro ever so slightly. It's strange to say it, David, but a 5/10 gap looks like, well, 6/10 now, looks like the biggest gap we've had all race for the lead.
I know, it's incredible, isn't it? And it's keeping us very busy. And I for one, I'm struggling to keep up with everything that's happening. It's been some fantastic racing so far, and I'm hoping that we're going to get another 29 minutes of that as we now ride alongside Aaron Martin Pilkington in the 626 Team 𝗪𝗡𝗪𝗧 car. Good to see that he's managed to get back out on track. Of course, we saw him in the pits whilst they were going out for the formation lap, so he must have dropped right to the back of the grid, and unfortunately he's managed to get back up, and he's doing a grand job so far.
Yeah, I would put money. Sorry, David, I'd put money on him maybe for getting to put fuel in the car. We saw him box after a lap or two. I wonder whether he actually didn't change over to race fuel and was running on fumes by the time he came round to take the green flag. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's just that costly little error from Martin Pilkington, but he's managing to make up for it, like you say, in 16th. Yeah,
absolutely. Interesting point from Mark 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 in the chat on the stream. He's saying that you would have thought Kieran would have had enough after 12 hours yesterday, but no. I mean, I've seen Kieran doing a hell of a lot of stuff recently, and he obviously came off of the RCI 24 Hours at Kyalami last weekend. He did a race with Simsport in the GT3 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧 literally an hour after that finished. Did the 12 hours at Silverstone yesterday, and now he's in the Ginetta Brit, getting a little bit of shape catching that grass. You mentioned it, Tim. These curves are ruthless. Drops a couple of wheels onto it, and you see even Bro now going wide, and Matt Richards following suit. It's going to be a case of drive-through soon, surely, if they keep running these track limits as much as they are.
Yeah, it's going to be a case of drive-through potentially, or the track's just going to bite back and send you off like we saw with Webb. But here we go, 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧 side by side with Kent. Andrews wants to slice the pie as well as they come into Old Hall. And 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧, if he can hold this inside line and carry enough speed, as we see Kent running slightly wide, they're going to go 3 wide. Andrews on the grass on the run down to Cascades. I think 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧's just about managed to keep it clean through the middle there, part the seas to some extent, and gain another position. So up to 11th place, I think, for 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧. Although a slight mistake on the exits allowed that's Kent. Kent's pulling over to the side slightly, and then Andrews is through. So it's all changed here, just outside the top 10.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? We're never going to keep account of this. Interestingly, it looked like Dan Richards is putting 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧 under another decent bout of pressure as they go into his laps. Didn't quite manage to make the move that time. Did he try a couple of laps ago? But I noticed that Dan Andrews did look to almost try a different line through there, and it almost caught him off guard because obviously Kieran 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗧 and Charlie Kent going into Old Hall side by side. Dan looked like he just dropped off because he was very close behind Charlie Kent going into the corner. Dropped off, got a fantastic run, and was almost too quick coming out of Old Hall down into towards Cascades because he had to check himself, and we saw him doing a bit of grass cutting as he went down the hill there, and he's lucky to have managed to get it back onto the black stuff before the braking zone. Otherwise, he could have been right off into the tire wall at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah, as we see on the timing tower, Marcus Hagel hitting pit lane in the 117, so not sure what's happened there. Unfortunate to see him drop out of 17th place. But yeah, you're completely right about Richards as well, just trying to pile on the pressure again. There wasn't enough pressure. He seems to kind of drop off slightly and then build up for another attack on 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. So I'm sure we'll get another fight here, as we see actually on the timing board, 𝗪𝗏𝗡𝗏 catching 𝗡𝗢𝗏. The gap now 2/10 and below. It's gonna be even less than that, I'm sure, as they go around this next lap, lap 11. 𝗪𝗏𝗡𝗏 fighting back through the order.
Yeah, he's certainly doing a great job. And like Chris Binchbet, he's saying everything we are at the moment. I wonder if he wants to get a job in the commentary box as well, Tim. He seems to be saying exactly the same thing we are. Aaron looks like he's on a good recovery drive, and he looks like if he gets a chance now, he's going to be well in position to get a 15th place at the moment if he manages to get past 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, who after that moment where we saw a couple of the guys going onto the grass, coming into and out of Druids a couple of laps ago, Rich just seems to be maybe not necessarily back in control or back under his back into the composed driving style we normally see from him. It looks like he's under a bit of pressure now from Aaron as he's trying to make the move stick, but he's just got a little bit of a gap to close yet. But it's a great run, it looks like, out of Britain's, and he's going to be nearly alongside as he goes down to his lap. He looks like he's going to try and get the move done before the braking zone. He just about managed to brake him. It's going to be 2 by 2, but no, Richard Pixley elects to drop him behind him, and that's a nice move done by Aaron there, and that puts him up into 15th place now.
Yeah, but just up the road you can see the white and black car. That's 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. So 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's had another incident in the battle with Andrews and Kent and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 for just outside the top 10. So yeah, he's lost out there, so he's got to gather himself up and push on again. But also, I'd like to say, quite nice running from Steam Passport in the 444 Fun Q car. He's driven that Ginetta countless times in Simsport GT4 racing and looking pretty strong in 9th place at the moment. But I'm sure he'll want to better that position, considering he has got a little bit of real world experience in this car. So I'm sure he'll be, he'll come back fighting next time for a slightly better position. But I'm sure he'll be happy with 9th at the moment, with Robbie Stapleford up the road and a nice healthy gap to Dave Hedges behind. But Richard's looking like he's going to have to start sizing things up with Bro, because that timer is still ticking down, David, as we just go over, well, coming up to halfway. So time's flying.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've, you were talking about it before the start of the race, didn't you, Tim? We wonder whether it's going to be one of those where the time flies or not. As you see Pilkington down the inside of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, who seems to be doing 2 steps forward, 1 step back at the moment, although it's probably the opposite. He's doing 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So he's now down into 15th place. And that recovery, or that initial kind of jump up the standings that he did after the first few laps, it seems to be going backwards a little bit. So I'm not sure if he's struggling with anything to do with tyre temperatures or anything like that, but he's certainly not feeling as comfortable as he might have done in the first 10 or 15 minutes of this. And you see Matt Richards is still twisting the screw, letting Aidan Bro know he's there. He knows he's there. He's been there for the last 22 and a half minutes, but he's just giving him a bit of an idea, and I wonder if he'll start sizing up a move. But going back to the other battle for the championship at the moment, of course, I say battle for the championship, we're halfway into the first of 5 rounds, but Gilbert doing a really stellar job at the moment, currently sitting in 7th position. It's over 10 seconds ahead of Daniel Andrews, who's currently the next AM driver in class, he's about 10 seconds ahead of him at the moment. So fantastic drive from Gilbert so far this race.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this battle for the lead, and Richards is really going to have to make something happen on Bro if he wants to take this first Simsport Racing Ginetta Sprint Series victory. But I think the man in the hot seat is Glenn Guest behind in the 52. You can imagine these two getting together, doing a 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Neil from the British touring car battles back in 2011, taking each other out on the run into the final time at Lodge. Glenn Guest, if he's close enough, is nearly 4 seconds behind. He could see himself snatch a victory at the death if drama unfolds between these two.
Absolutely. I mean, nearly saw it in Stewards a couple of laps ago. Of course, we saw Matt Richards maybe getting a little bit too overconfident and nearly tapped the back end of Aidan Bro into the first apex of Druids, which we're going into now. Obviously, he doesn't do the same again this time because he's a little bit further back, but they're still gapping Guest slightly. But like you say, Tim, in any form of battle here, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, if we we go back to it. If you get a battle going, it can last for a good couple of corners here at Oulton Park, and it does give the guys behind them a chance to broach that gap. But these guys, they're separated by less than a piece of paper almost, and they have been the entire last 24 minutes. And cue Chris Pinchbeck, I mentioned it, he's done it again. Bro has done an amazing job to keep Richards at bay. I think we should bring him in.
Steve Proudly and Ari are giving Mr. Pinchbeck some comments about not putting enough fuel in the car to finish the race at Bathurst. So I look forward to Pinchy's reply in the YouTube chat on that one. He's spot on, like you say, David. Bro has done from behind. As we see in picture here, we can see Pilkington closing on the back of Kent in front. So really, we've got this little fight between these two guys who are fighting up the order. Kent, who had his lap time removed in qualifying, he was disqualified. And then Pilkington, who had to pit early on and drop right down the order. So these guys are trying to do the same job, really, which is fight back up the order. And they're exchanging blows now as they go side by side into Island Bend. Martin Pilkington on the inside. Kent closes the door slightly and realises there's a car on his inside on the run into the Shell Oils corner, and Pilkington trying to use the camber around the outside. It's almost like an oval corner through there, and he has done so. Got a nice run out there into Britain's. He's going to have the inside, and hopefully he can just close the door on Kent and get the move done, and has done so. So fantastic working there from Martin Pilkington. The racecraft we mentioned, David, as we see 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏 in the pits, dropping down the timing screen. I wonder what's happened there. Hopefully we'll find out, but that looks like that's race over for 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏.
Yeah, absolutely, and we can go back to that there. I mean, that was a wonderful move from Aaron, wasn't it? He sized it up from a couple of corners before. Chris has Pinchy's put his comment back into the chat. It was a schoolboy error for Steve when he's listening. I'm sure he'll laugh that one off and take that with a pinch of salt, I've no doubt. But I mean, what a move from Aaron there! Brilliant. He sized it up and did exactly what he talked about a couple of laps ago to him, where he went for the outside line into Island Bend, which is not the typical driver's instinct line. You want to go down the inside, but he sized it up. He did a fantastic job and got the move done going into Britain's as well. And it was one of those where he just kind of put his car where he knew Charlie Kent wasn't going to be able to do anything against it. But those two are doing a fantastic job regardless of where they are. And the fact they've managed to get themselves to the back of the grid pretty much all the way up into 12th and 13th respectively. Yeah,
really nice driving from the pair of them as well, not to come to blows around the tricky island section here at Oulton Park. But here we have Reid Mitchell and Miles Dixon going at it as they come through now into Britain's chicane. These two having a very strong race so far, up in 5th and 6th at the moment. And they've managed to both get, I think Dixon's managed to get past Gilbert and is now kicking on to the back of Mitchell as they go side by side down into Hislop's. Exciting, it's all bit of contact between the two. Dixon trying to go around the outside. Mitchell going to hold the inside through Knickerbrook, and we might see a bit of a switchback. It's that game of chess you were talking about, David. It's one move one way and one move the other.
Yeah, absolutely. That was, if I was going to prefer that one to chess, it was very much a case of Miles just kind of getting his paw and just smacking one of the other pieces on Regan's side. And he looks like he's just about made the move into Druids. He's going to be hard pushed to hold on to it. Looks like Regan's going to have the inside down into Lodge corner. Surely he's going to make the mistake. He's just going to try and close the door. But Miles Dixon gets a great run around the outside of Lodge. They go on to Deer Leap and over the start-finish straight onto lap number 17, I believe it will be now. So basically they've had 17 laps and got 17 minutes left. He's still going to be alongside him, nearly going into Old corner in Miles Dixon eventually. And if you think about that, that was about a 7 or 8 corner move. Tim. That was absolutely incredible racecraft from those guys. It just shows you that you can't expect to have that move done and dusted straight away, especially when you're in these equal machinery cars. It's very much just a case of, look, I'm going to try and get the move done, and then at some point I'm going to have to just try and shut the door on the guy behind me.
Yeah, more cutbacks than a Tory government there this evening, wasn't it? So exciting stuff from controversial anyway. From Dixon Mitchell going side by side in many corners. I've probably got a bit too political there, didn't I? But anyway, we'll all have a laugh this evening. I can hear Proudly laughing in my ear, so he enjoyed that one. But yeah, Mitchell and Dixon exchanging blows. And like you say, you've got to set that move up corners in advance, but then expect the battle to continue corners further down the road as we see Richards and Bro coming together once again as they run up into Druids, and Bro kind of using a cheeky line to cut off Richards, who looks to the inside, side by side, Richards nearly makes contact with the right rear, and they're still going to be side by side on the run down into Lodge with Bro 2 wheels on the grass. And he's trying to close the door, just manages to sneak in front. Richards cut back to the outside, can't get the move done. He's going to try and prioritise the exit as they come through 𝗧𝗓𝗏. But once again, Bro forced to pull a trick out of the hat to keep Richards behind.
Yeah, it's a fantastic defensive display for Maiden Bro, isn't it? He's really pulling everything out of the bag to stop him. Interestingly enough, his best lap time of 1:41.9 is actually quicker than the pole position lap of 1:42.5, I think, or 1:42.4 at the end from the same driver. So he's not only quick, he's putting a fantastic defensive display on as well, and he's doing a fantastic job of keeping Matt Richards behind. Question is, Tim, is he going to manage to hold him on behind for the next 15 minutes?
Well, we've got to factor in the next challenge, which is indeed traffic. So we're seeing them catch one of the wild things Ginetta's up the road. So they're going to have to start thinking about other cars on track. They've really been blessed with just these two fighting it out, only one other car to be worried about. And now they might have to factor in where a third or fourth car might be trying to, get out of the way, or might catch them at an awkward point, and you've got to go around the outside somewhere. So really interested to see how, like with 15 minutes to go, you say, they're going to be catching traffic, and it's something else to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see roughly when they'll catch that traffic. I don't know if we can see any on the other side of the camera. We can't at the moment, but obviously we still need to keep guests in mind. Like you said, Tim, could we see a BTCC relived moment from a couple of years back where we saw, like you say, I can't remember the two names. It's not. I sort of stopped watching BTCC around the turn of the century after they changed everything around. Sort of less cars are on the track, but Pilkington going down the inside, down the hill in towards his lots. Going to make the move on Dave Hedges, just about the side by side going into the second apex. Looks like Aaron's managed to make the move done though in a as you'd expect. That's kind of the run you want, I think, as you can you take the inside line to the first apex. If you can hang it around the outside, you've got the inside line into Nickelbrook, and he's made that move tick, and he's now come from the back of the grid up to 11th place. Tim, fantastic drive from him.
Yeah, really nice drive. He's got a best part 2.5 second gap now to close to Daniel Andrews in front in the 29. But that was really nice. He picked his lane almost, and he actually managed to swoop across the front of Hedges in between those, in between the Hislop chicane and Nickelbrook, to really close the door and say, "Move done. I'm in front of you now, Mr. Hedges." So Bro and Richards still locked together with 13.5 minutes to go. And they are catching that traffic in front, which I think is 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. If not, it's Denise Pope. I think it is 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, judging by the timing screen. So they really are going to have to start, Bro's going to be on the headlight button soon, flashing away to let that car in front know that he's catching. Yeah, it is 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. He's running down the order, actually outside the top 23 on the left-hand side of the screen. So yeah, I think it's game on between these two.
Absolutely. I'm sure Aidan will be hoping for a nice, easy run past 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and then hopefully just about gets that move done before some sort of corner like Drew is now, where Richards might be able to get stuck behind him a little bit, because I'm sure he'd be wanting some form of relief from this constant pressure. It's been 30 minutes nearly of pretty much no holds barred constant pressure from Matt, and it's. I mean, unless he makes the move, I can't see this stopping him for the next 12.5 minutes. It's unbelievable. And I think it proves point that with a track like this, obviously Oulton Park, where you can have many different lines through a couple of different corners, it's proven the point that it's probably easier to be the second car, because you can almost judge everyone else. You can judge what everyone else is doing, manage their braking markers, and almost manage your race from there. But it's going to be, give maybe another 7 or 8 minutes, and I think we might start to see Matt just trying to get a little bit closer and maybe make a little bit more of an aggressive move just to try and get that done. He's been fairly passive so far.
Here we come up to this traffic. This traffic's
Absolutely.
going to cause a problem. I'm convinced this traffic, especially here, so 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 actually just decides to go off the track entirely. That's one way of letting them through. He really joins safely. They're going to be catching up to, I think that's 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 in front. So race to 2 halves for Kieran in the number 4 Simsport Solutions car. But like you say, David, it's going to have to be something spectacular, I think, from Richards. We know Bro's not going to roll over and let it happen, because otherwise he would have let the Ginetta of the number 44 of Richards go through earlier on in the race and fight back. So he really wants to keep him behind. And I saw the times as they crossed the line. One of Bro's fastest laps was a 41.9, but his last lap was a 43. So it really shows how the pace has dropped off in the half an hour of racing so far. So I wonder if Richards feels like he's got some more speed in the car at the moment, and he's going to be looking for a way through shortly.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly looks more confident, doesn't he, Tim? I think it's just a case of he can't actually make that move done. It'd be very interesting to see if he does get the move done, whether he does start to, I wouldn't say disappear off into the distance, but just start to bridge that gap slightly as Guest is staying very close, and Andrews is under a bit of pressure now from 𝗪𝗞𝗘𝗡𝗏, who's looking to get himself into, well, he's actually in the top 10 rather, he's looking to get himself further into the top 10. Further cementing the fact that he's had a fantastic recovery drive, considering using the pits at one point on the formation lap, sticks behind him through 𝗔𝗠𝗧, but looks like he gets a good run. Looks a little bit wide out of 𝗔𝗠𝗧, and he's going to be on the outside going into 𝗏𝗔𝗡𝗏. It's going to be an interesting move. He does manage to get it done, as I think you're right, was 𝗪𝗞𝗘𝗏 ahead of these guys in the lead at the moment. But Dan Andrews looks like he's a little bit too tight on the apex there, but just about manages to cut back across and keep that keep that position onto lap number 21.
Yeah, I wonder where we would have seen Martin Pilkington end up in the Team 𝗬𝗪𝗡𝗧 626 car, because he did have to pit, and I'm pretty sure he took fuel, and I would have lost easily 30 seconds or so in pit lane. So I wonder where we would have seen him end up. Okay, yeah, he's fought fantastically back into the top 10 and is now locked in a fight for 9th, as we see 𝗔𝗏𝗡𝗏 head to pit lanes. The driver I was giving to earlier seems to have come a cropper somewhere around the lap with just under 10 minutes to go. So yeah, I really think we could have seen Martin Pilkington, okay, maybe not challenging 𝗏𝗏 and Richards, they look like the two that a class above the rest, but I wonder if we would have seen him in that top 5 battle with Burrows, Dixon, Mitchell, Gilbert, around that kind of area. I feel confident that he would have had the pace to fight with those guys pretty well.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tim, and I think he probably would have thought the same as well. I'm sure he's ruining that potential mistake. He's going down the inside into his lops, he's going to get the inside line, and that's as easy a move you're going to get. Daniel Andrews looked like he just kind of went, yeah, I'll let you go. Just mirror signal manoeuvre and just let him through into the chicane there. Probably a sensible one. Like I say, you do need to have someone you're comfortable racing with as you're going into that little chicane if you're going to go side by side, and potentially Daniel's just gone, look, I'll live to fight another day, and I'll take a 10th position. And of course at the moment he's running second in the AM series as well, and is quite comfortably in that position, so I'm sure he'll be thinking of his own respective championship as much as anything else.
Definitely, he'll say, okay, it's not a battle worth fighting, yeah, it might bag me some more points, but reality is I'm in a nice healthy spot at the moment, with Gilbert nearly 18 seconds up the road now inside in 7th place. So not a battle worth fighting for Daniel Andrews, as we see Bro's able to just get a little bit of a gap on Richards at the first half of this lap, now up over half a second. And it's amazing to think that we remark at a gap being over half a second, David. That's just how close these guys have been all race.
Absolutely, yeah, you're spot on. I mean, the gap looks bigger than the gap on the track looks a little bit longer than the actual timing screen. We'll see as they come up. I think as they come up over the hill, we'll see the timing board refresh again. So just see 𝗫𝗏𝗡𝗏 you mentioned in the chat gets second on the relative now, just so you see it confirmed there 1.049. But 𝗫𝗏𝗡𝗏 unfortunately had a flat tyre, Tim. I don't know if you've seen it in the chat, so that's why he's unfortunately, by the looks of it, dropped out of this race, which is a real shame. Like I say, he was doing a really good job up until that point.
Yeah, and we're saying the curbs can be very unfriendly to this Ginetta, so they seem like they've rather had an impact on Mr. Paspont's tyres this evening, and have decided that the only form of punishment best served for the crime is a flat tyre. But yeah, Bro's really managed to pull something out of the bag. A 42.6 has given him 1.5 seconds, which is the biggest that gap's been all race, and with 7 minutes to go, it's match point Bro.
I mean, I call showmanship from Aiden, to be honest. I mean, he's kept that gap so close for the last 35 minutes nearly. Sorry, 35 minutes. And now, yeah, he's just disappeared up the road. And it didn't look to me like Matt Richards made any form of mistake. He's got a 1.7 second gap, and Best is actually closing in on that now. So it's going to be interesting to see whether Matt will even keep his second step on the podium.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm wondering, David, sorry, I was wondering whether Richards is running out of fuel, maybe. Maybe he's cutting it fine and is having to lift and coast. That's the only reason I can think for such a drop-off in pace from Bro. They've been so tied together. I wonder if that's starting to play into the race in 6 minutes to go.
That's not a bad show. I mean, we'll get interviews from the top three at the end of the race, Tim, and I know you're going to be doing those. So hopefully you'll be able to ask the hard-hitting questions and see if we can understand exactly why that's happened. I mean, that is, of course, if he's needed to lift and coast like he seems like he could potentially with 6 minutes left. That's if Matt's even going to get a chance to be on the podium, because he's got obviously Guest is a couple of seconds behind. James Burrows, or John Burrows rather, is only a couple of seconds behind him as well. So if it's not by any means done yet, and I'm sure Jordan will be keeping a very close eye on that relative and potentially chancing his arm at a final step on the podium before this race is done.
Yeah, I'm sure of it, and we don't know what fuel levels these guys are running or what their strategies were with playing it closer on fuel, or whether they're going to be more reserved. I mean, personally, I always take a little bit more than I need to, probably a couple of laps or so more, just in case you catch the checkered flag, the white flag at the wrong time, and you've got to go round one more lap. So I was starting to think, really, Richard's dropping off 2.3 seconds now, and Guest is closing in behind. Whether he has really cut it fine on fuel with over 5 minutes to go, he's going to have really 2-3 more laps still to complete, and that gap's just really gone out, and Bro can almost cruise to the checkered.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's 𝗖𝗔𝗟𝗏's race to lose now, isn't it? I know he's got back markers to circumnavigate over the next couple of laps, potentially in the form of 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, but I mean, he's got that gap now, and it's just a case of, I think it's more a case of where is Matt Richards going to finish. I think you've hit the nail on the head, and he's got to be saving fuel, because he's losing time hand over fist. He's now only just over 2 seconds ahead of Glenn Guest, who's in third, which we see both of them in the picture-in-picture at the moment, being managed by our broadcaster Steve Proudly, and he's getting closer and closer. You see that gap is closing by the corner, and Jordan Burrows there is just a little bit further back on it, coming down the hill. I say again, I think he's still within that chance of getting that final step of the podium.
You've got to see how much Richard's pace really drops off as he crosses the line at the end of this lap. It'd be nice to see what kind of times he's doing, but Guest only 2.1 seconds down the road now, as in picture we see Mitchell and Dixon going at it once again with 4 minutes to go, and Richard slowing on the back straight. He's pulling over to the right hand side, and that's going to allow Guest through for second. So I think Richards really is low on fuel. I wouldn't be surprised to see him dive to pit lane. That looks like that could be race over. And your prediction, David, of Burrows getting on the podium? Yes, Richards dives to pit lane. That's it, race done. Something's gone wrong there for Richards. Heartbreaking with 3.5 minutes to go.
Oh, that is such a shame. I mean, I had him pegged for that race victory. I was convinced he was going to get the move done on 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏, and well, I think it just proves the point. Proves the point of you've got to be prepared for your racing. If we're not allowed pit stops, which of course we aren't in the series, but being a sprint race, he's done a pitch back, as I've just heard in my ear, which I'm sure Pinchy will love to hear. And got that, and he's given everyone a chance of getting another couple of points in this championship. As Regan Mitchell now come through Cascades under a very close on the back of Miles Dixon. He's not necessarily going to make a move into Ireland, but he's looking like he can start to calculate a move over the next couple of minutes. 3 minutes left as it stands, so I think we're probably looking at probably 2 maximum of maybe 3 laps left in this race for people to make their last-ditch moves and try and get themselves an extra couple of points. Yeah,
it looks like Mitchell's going to try and wind something up on Dixon in front. These two have been struggling to settle the dispute for positions for the entirety of this race, and actually such was the lead that Bro and Richards had on the rest of the field that Richards has come out of the pit lane in 10th place, so he's still going to bag some nice points. So it wasn't race over, but definitely not the race he would have wanted. So very disappointing for Richards. I'm sure we'll see him come back fighting one of the Zancho Simsport cars running in this series. So like you say, David, you've got to be prepared for that race to just maybe be a little bit more aggressive than you think. You've got to be prepared for all these eventualities that maybe you're going to be pushing harder than you had planned to, and Richards definitely was in that battle with Bro. He would have been hanging the car out, and every lap would have been the fastest lap he could have possibly done to keep on the back of the 93 Butler PAL Motorsports car. So disappointing to see the race end like that, but I'm sure we'll get more of the same next time out.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, if we've seen anything this evening, it's going to be a case of the next 4 rounds are going to be much more of the same, I'm sure. And with a completely brilliant mix of tracks. Of course, we've mentioned the track list, and we'll come back to that for the end of the evening. There's plenty of chances for these guys to have a good run and get some points of their own. And of course, as you mentioned, Tim, points running all the way down the field, you're still going to get points regardless. It's not necessarily a bad thing if you do need to drop into the pits like Matt did and just bring it back and get some decent points on the board. he'll still have his chance, and I'm sure he'll still be right up at the sharp end of the grid in the next 4 weekends that we have available. But 𝗧𝗏𝗏 is still now in the Ball Shifters 69 machine. Again, I'm trying not to make sure I mispronounce it at any point. Still looking for 4th place, but he has dropped a little bit back off of Miles Dixon with just over a minute left.
Yeah, and I suppose actually an interesting thing to look at here is Martin Pilkington in 8th. He pitted in the opening couple of tours, and 𝗏𝗏𝗏s, who we've just seen hit pit lane, they're in 8th and 10th. So such has been their pace that they're able to still finish in the top 10 after having to stop in pit lane. So really exciting stuff from those guys. I'm sure they're going to have plenty to offer in the rest of the season, but with it's around half a minute to go, probably going to get one more lap. Depends where Bro is. Yeah, it looks like we're going to have one more lap. He's really just coasting now. Look, he's in the 43.8s. Guest around 5 seconds further back, with Burrows then best part 2 seconds behind, and Dixon in 4th place, 10 seconds roughly off the podium fight, as we see one of the 𝗦𝗘𝗕𝗏s, Ginetta's rejoining from pit lane. So yeah, Bro's just got to cruise round now, not make any mistakes, and not undo all the hard work of this evening's opening round.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting note, Tim. I've just seen a couple of messages in the chat from Cameron 5. He's not sure whether Matt would get away with taking fuel rather, and he has mentioned that no refueling is allowed. So obviously results this evening, pending any investigations, will be provisional. So don't take it with a pinch of salt, of course, and we'll give you updated championship standings at the next round in a couple of weeks' time at Brands Hatch. But we mentioned, we said Matt Richards always putting Daniel Andrews under pressure. It could all be for nothing, as it could mean that Daniel ends up in 9th place regardless if he does get any form of penalty or failing that, any disqualifications. The time has hit 0, so it is the final lap, as you mentioned. Matt Richards going around the outside, and Cascade's getting a little bit sideways onto the back straight, but Daniel Andrews manages to make it, managing to keep his 9th place position intact at the moment. Coming on to the final couple of corners, as Ada Bro was under an immense amount of pressure throughout that race, but due to a bit of, dare I say, poor preparation from Matt Richards, he's been gifted what in the end, Tim, has been quite a comfortable race win.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find out from Richards in between now and the next race what really happened, but Bro's risen to the occasion. He's been the man on the mission this evening. Fantastic defensive driving for easily half an hour of that one to keep Richards behind, and as we see Bro flashing the lights and weaving from side to side, he's going to take victory at the opening round of the Simsport Racing Ginetta Brit Sprint Series, and Miles Dixon's going to come home a happy 4th place after keeping 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 at bay.
Yeah, absolutely. Glenn Guest and Jordan Burrows rounding out the podium, so fantastic work from those two. See, Jordan Burrows, fun enough, we go all the way back to an hour ago when we started qualifying. He was actually the first person to put a lap on the board. So it's interesting how he's come back, and I think he's had a fantastic race. Big old gap back to Miles Dixon, but he'd been battling 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, as you said, Tim, for quite a portion of that race. See, Martin Pilkington, driver of the day, in my opinion. Obviously, going back to 27th, 28th, or wherever he was on the grid when he went in for that pit stop at the start of the race, and just come back for a very commendable 8th position. Fantastic work from him.
Yeah, fantastic driving indeed to really get himself in amongst it and not make mistakes and not cost himself too much time to end up inside the top 10 at what is a tightly packed grid with some very competitive drivers in amongst it. We've got a load of drivers from the likes of Pulse Esports. We've got some Zancho guys here, obviously the guys from Simsport Solutions. Here's one of them, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. He had a plan up his sleeve for qualifying that nearly paid off, bar a mistake, and then he looked like he was the man on a mission in the race, and unfortunately he's going to make the same mistake as he made in qualifying just as I'm talking about it. So I think is that my first as he rides it rodeo style buckaroo over the exit of Druids there. But yeah, he's my first case of commentator's curse potentially with 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, so I'm sure he'll drop me a message about that after the race. So disappointed with 21st. I think we could have seen a lot more from him, and I think we will see a lot more from him next time out at Brands Hatch.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. I mean, I'll let you disappear because I know you've got some interviews to do, and we'll hopefully give everyone on the stream a chance to listen to some hard-hitting questions from Tim and for the top 3 of this race. But what a brilliant race that was! It was plenty of action all the way through, Tim. If you still don't know, if you disappeared off the app, we'll get to that in a second. But brilliant work from everyone, and fantastic work from Aidan. Like I said, it was pretty comfortable for the majority of the way through that. For the end of that race rather. But he was under an immense amount of pressure, and I'm sure Matt will be putting in a fairly decent amount of fuel over what he would have expecting in the next round at Brands Hatch.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him brimming that thing and running around slightly heavier than he would like to, just to make sure he doesn't get caught up in a mistake or an incident like he had this evening. I would like to find out from Matt really what happened there. It did look, it had all the symptoms of running out of fuel. Likewise with Aaron Pilkington's fantastic battle up to P8, I think, at the end. He looked like a driver who had to pit early to take fuel and hadn't swapped over from his qualifying setup. So a couple of little mistakes there from drivers that they'll need to iron out for next time, because like we say, 5 races, it's a very short season. And I'm interested to hear what these guys have to say about their first race. So I'll run down to the commentary booth. Steve and David. Steve, our broadcast director, doing a fantastic job this evening. And I'll see if we can get Glenn in.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so we'll get on to those guys in a minute. But yeah, fantastic work for the top 3. We'll get some words from them in just a second. And Tim will be the one to be able to interview them fresh out of the virtual cockpit for the top 3.
So we are in the commentary booth. I've got Glenn Guest with me. Glenn, an exciting race to kick off Simsport's GT4 Ginetta British Sprint Series. A little bit of a boring race, really, for you in some respects, kind of lapping on your own for the majority of the race. But things changed at the end. How was your first adventure in the Ginetta this evening?
Yeah, really enjoyed it. It was pretty boring race for me, to be honest. Just sat in third for quite a while, just watching the 2 guys in front of me just able to pull a gap, and then I was able to pull a gap to the chap behind me as well. But I really started to struggle about halfway through the race. I think, like everyone, I was getting pressure loss all over, smashing the curbs. So yeah, right at the end, I think it was Burrows was catching me like a train, but just managed to hold it. And then I'm not sure what happened to Richards either. He must have had some sort of problem. But fairly boring until the end. Yes,
of course. So this is a question I'm going to ask the other drivers who are now in the commentary box. I'll get to you guys with this one so you can prepare your answer. But Glenn, how did you find Superpole qualifying? This is something that's new to the Simsport portfolio of racing series. How did you find the pressure of you've got 1 lap to set your time and make the mistake, and that's your best time gone?
Yeah, absolutely loved it. I think it's great, just that they've got to get everything right on that 1 lap. It really brings out everything you have. I've done it a couple of times in my karting, so I'm quite used to it, luckily. But yeah, no, it's really good. Really enjoyed it. Fantastic.
Well, thank you very much, Glenn. Look forward to seeing you out there next time. We'll move on to Jordan Burrows, who finished he inherited 3rd position right at the end of the race with Matt Richards heading to pit lane. Jordan, how was your race? And congratulations on the podium.
It was pretty disappointing from my end, really. Towards the end, it was getting a lot better because I thought about the pressure loss beforehand. So at the start, I was running about 28 psi all round, which meant I was struggling to keep up with the top 3. But as it showed towards the end, I was just really starting to catch them quite quickly.
So we get a lot of people who are watching who might not have watched sim racing before, or might not have driven ACC or this car before. How much time does one of these pressure losses cost you? Because as you're saying, you found pace at the end. Glenn really said he was struggling or dropping off in terms of his optimum speed. In terms of tenths or more per lap, how much time are you really losing around somewhere like Oulton Park?
I think it's probably close to a second a lap. If you have really bad, as you saw, a couple of them had punctures and had to go to the pit lane. So from my point of view, I'd rather sacrifice a couple of attempts at the start of a race, having overpressured tyres, so I can continue maintaining pace at the end.
Brilliant. Well, next time out, some people might say you inherited that podium through Richards having a problem. So we're going to see you fighting for that top 3 fair and square?
I hope so, yeah, fingers crossed.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jordan. Congratulations on your podium. And we'll go to Aidan Bro, tonight's winner. Aidan, you were under pressure for the majority of that one, but it was probably nice to have a bit of breathing space at the end with Richards hitting pit lane.
Yeah, definitely. I was under the cosh from lap 1, basically, turn 1. It's super hard to pull away in these cars. With it being a spec series, you just know the guy behind you's got the toe on you. So even if they make a little error here and there, they can close back up, no problem. And with Matt just being so quick as well. Anyway, he was just able to hang on the back of me. I would break a couple of tenths ahead, then he'd catch back up, and it was just nip and tuck. But I made a few errors, which allowed him to have a bit of a go at me, and then just managed to hang on. Basically, yeah, it was super clean racing though.
So we saw you obviously take pole position, our first Superpole here at Simsport Racing, and we saw a different strategy from yourself compared to some other drivers, really, leaving it late. Was that always your plan, to go out on track right at the end, or did you just see the number of cars heading out to pit lane early on and change it on the fly? Was that your game plan coming into this evening?
I did sort of think about it before, I did think it was only a 5-minute session and thought it was going to be really, really busy. So with it being a 10-minute, I immediately thought, right, I'll go in the last sort of 5 minutes then, just because I did as well. I did see how many people went out on track immediately, and it was just making sense to let them finish the laps, and then there'll be only 10 cars or so maximum on the circuit, and just find myself a nice gap. But yeah, really, really interesting, the Superpole. Made an error at 𝗓𝗓𝗏 and thought I'd blown it. Basically, I was on stream cursing myself for fluffing it, but then crossed the line and was like, yes, that's P1. Looked at the times and it was 6,000. So yeah, super happy to just nip it.
So obviously as well, we know you're taking part in the Simsport Racing GT4 series, which you've raced in previously in the Aston Martin. We see you're racing in the Ginetta as well. So is this a car you're really looking to get to grips with, and are you enjoying it so far?
Brilliant, fun little car. I mean, I was going to take it last season for the GT4 League, but didn't actually know anything about the ballast because I signed up super late. So in the season 3, there was no ballast. So it was just a case of the Porsche was really, really good. I think I was in the Audi just for something a bit different. And then I went with the Aston thinking that would be a good alternative to the Porsche, and then realised that there was a load of weight added to all the cars. So in hindsight, I would have gone Ginetta in season 4 as well. But yeah, getting to learn it now for sort of 2 series at the same time, it just sort of made sense to stick with the Ginetta for that series as well and see what we can do with it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, 𝗦𝗔𝗟𝗘𝗡𝗏. Look forward to seeing you next time out at Brands Hatch, and congratulations on your race win.
Much.
And we've got Charlie Kent in the commentary booth. So, Charlie, an exciting race for you, really. You seem to be on our screens a lot of the time, fighting with the likes of 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗏 and Daniel Andrews for the majority of that one. But unfortunately, you were left to fight through the order after an infringement in qualifying. Can you explain what happened there?
Yeah, it was just a stupid mistake on my part, really. I think I just sort of misunderstood whether we were doing an in-lap or not, so I made sure it was very slow if we were doing that, so it wasn't clear it was a lap, but obviously I just misunderstood the rules, either that or just being an idiot. So, completely on me. If that's the rules, that's the rules. But, yeah, it's just, you race on.
And how was it fighting up through the order here at Oulton Park? It's a track that can lend itself to overtaking it's got very limited opportunities for making passes. How did you find it battling wheel to wheel with cars in the same, obviously it's a single make series. There's not much advantage in terms of any ballast or balance of performance effects. So how did you find making those moves this evening?
Yeah, I actually had really good fun. I think I've gained, it was 11 places on the first lap, funny enough. Wow. Just from either people that I was quicker than, or from mistakes being made, or people spinning, or whatever the case may be. But I ended up, gaining up the positions. I got to, I think, about P11 or so. But unfortunately, my pressure losses started to mount, and obviously, where in ACC, obviously the more pressure losses you get on a tyre, the more likely it is to get another one, and it just sort of piled up. I think by the end of the race, my left tyres were on, I think, my 21 PSI.
Wow.
So it wasn't great. So I was losing about 2 seconds a lap, but we held in there, and I managed to come home with P14. So, good stuff.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Charlie, for dropping into the commentary booth. And thanks all to the drivers who have joined us this evening, and congratulations on your results.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
There you go. Yeah, lovely introducing the guys there from Tim. Fantastic work as ever. Interesting to note some of the things that a lot of guys struggling from pressure loss as well. There, Tim. Did you want to go drop in? I know that Matt's available. Do you want to have a quick chat with him?
Yeah,
as well?
sure.
Back to you.
I'll grab him in. Hi, Matt. Thank you for dropping into the interview waiting room. Obviously, we were saying about we were talking about you pitting towards the end of the race, and we've seen you drop into the YouTube chat saying it was pressure loss. Can you just run us through what happened there? It was right at the death that the issue struck.
Yeah, I was struggling for a lot of the race, to be honest. I clipped one of the cubes pretty heavily on the rear left, about 5 or 6 laps in, and from there it became a bit of a problem. You could probably see that the traction out of a lot of the corners, me compared to Aiden, was pretty poor. So I was just trying to make the best of a poor situation, really, just trying everything that I could. I figured if I could get in front of him, Oulton's a pretty easy track to defend on. So I thought that if I could get in front, that maybe I might be able to just hold him back a little bit and look after the tyres, but just couldn't do it. And unfortunately, the pressure dropped low enough in the rear left that eventually it went pop, and that was the end of the podium, really.
An exciting race though. Before that, you were really matching, bro. You guys were locked together, exchanging blows. There are a few opportunities where it looked like you might have got the move done. Did you enjoy things though out there tonight before the tyre issue?
100%. I think this is only the 3rd race that I've done in ACC. So it's still something that I'm pretty new to. So the tyre issues I knew about, but I didn't think that they would cause as much of a problem. It was nice to know that I had the pace. I think in a couple of places I had the legs on Aiden, and if I'd got in front early, then maybe I could have made a little bit of a gap. But yeah, he just made a brilliant defensive drive, and there's just nothing that I could do, really. Just want to take the progress with the pace on to the next one.
Definitely. And speaking of the next race, Brands Hatch, obviously we saw the Superpole getting its first outing this evening. How did you find the new qualifying format? We saw 0.006 of a second was the margin at the end. Did you enjoy the jeopardy of the one lap?
Yes and no. The lap that I did was pretty poor. From offline testing, I knew that I had a 41.7 in me, especially in the one lap situation. And I don't know whether it was the pressure of just having the one lap and it being the time to do it or not. But yeah, he picked me. It was close, but yeah, it's all good information to take forward to the next round. Brands is a track that I much prefer to Oulton Park. Out of all the tracks on the on the calendar, it's definitely the one I dislike the most. So yeah, it should be good.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, Matt, and congratulations on the result. I know you've going to come back fighting next time.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it, folks. Interesting to hear from Matt there, Tim. It was good to know that it wasn't fuel based and it wasn't just a lack of preparation, but it shows, and well, as everyone else said as well, tyres were a premium, shall we say?
Yeah.
Throughout that race, plenty of punches and plenty of pressure losses throughout that 45-minute session.
Definitely, and obviously that's my mistake for not realizing that the server actually just doesn't allow refueling, so you can't even take fuel if you make the mistake. So yeah, it really shows that the rubber here is a limiting factor in this series, and I think this is going to be something we see going forwards. But it's interesting to hear from Jordan Burrows, who obviously inherited third, got himself on the podium, that he thinks really that a pressure loss like that, you can lose a second a lap, which is massive if you think about it, considering how close the guys are and how close qualifying is. So a really interesting insight into what we've got coming up for the rest of the season. And like Matt Richards was saying there at the end, he's third race on ACC. He's still learning, but undoubtedly a lot of the other guys are still going to be learning what this series holds for them.
Absolutely, yeah. Not too bad for his third race at all. Yeah, and you mentioned there, Tim, obviously Brands Hatch coming up next. It's going to be interesting to see how these guys go. Of course, it's a track that's been in ACC for much longer than Oulton Park, so something that most of the guys would be a lot more familiar with. But it poses its own challenges, and I think with a track like it is, I think you mentioned it was a park style kind of circuit, as a couple of the tracks are on this calendar for this British Ginetta Sprint series this time round. It's going to be interesting to see how the Superpole rounds out again that time. And certainly looks like, based on tonight's viewing, that we're going to be in for a fantastic round in a couple of weeks' time.
Definitely, yeah. And Brands Hatch is a circuit that I think lends itself to overtaking a bit more than Oulton Park. I'm sure that the guys still managed to put on a show considering the nature of this circuit. But really, Brands Hatch, you've got the opportunities at Paddock Hill, into Druids, obviously, down the longer back straight through the drop down into Hawthorns. So I'm really excited to see how these guys go racing on a circuit that maybe opens things up to a bit more of battling. But I'm saying that, and we've just done 45 minutes of absolutely side-by-side Ginetta action. So yeah, it's been a pleasure commentating on this one. I'm looking forward to more of this.
Absolutely, yeah, it'd be amazing to see if they see a fifth one, but we'll call it there for this evening. Tim, thank you again very much, mate, for your time this evening. It's been fantastic racing. Like I say, I'm very much looking forward to the next race at Brands Hatch. But like I say, in the meantime, for Simsport Racing fans, be back here on Wednesday, the 3rd of March, before the start of the GT4 Season 5 here at Oulton Park. But on behalf of myself and Tim, thank you for everyone for tuning in this evening. And Steve, of course, for monitoring the cameras. He's just very much pointed that out in my ear as well. So thanks for that, Steve. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, wherever it is you are, across the four corners of the globe. And we will catch you guys again very soon. Thank you again for watching. Take care. Have an awesome rest of the day.